thank you, Father. What am I doing up here? I'm the cheapest speaker they have. I now live in the area. And I was wondering what I could say that would rouse applause and get people, their blood pressure going again and all. Then it hit me. I didn't have to really say anything. All I had to do was one thing. It worked. It also works as a entree into kind of the tone of my remarks here. And that is this. My wife and daughter and I moved recently from Massachusetts to Ravens territory. Oh, wait a minute. I'll say one other piece of information about my background. At one point, I moved from the solid red Midwestern state of Indiana to the somewhat solid blue eastern state of Massachusetts. Now, people in Indiana didn't boo. What they said, and what I have come to learn, is that Massachusetts is a mission territory. And you are the primary ground troops, the missionaries in a blue state. My wife and daughter and I are now missionaries in a Raven state. And here's the connection. You all of us, are missionaries of life in the culture of death. We're all wearing Patriots hats, so to speak, in Raven's territory. And that demands of all of us certain key virtues. I won't name them because you already have exercised them. Now what I want to do is share a few stories exemplifying some virtues. And then you can, as you're marching today, witnessing to the gospel of life, living out other virtues, reflect upon what God is calling you individually as part of the mission group to do in the culture of death as a missionary for life. Last night, my dad, who was in town, Frank Avila, he took the train from Indiana. He's been staying with my wife, Elaine, who's back this way, and I. My daughter's still in Massachusetts, where she's going to college. She's a sophomore at Emerson College. And he invited us to come to the Capitol. And the local congressman, Marlin Stutzman, is part of this wonderful freshman class of new congressmen that have come in this last term down here at the U.S. Capitol to change things. And Representative Stutzman is from the 3rd Congressional District in northern Indiana. Fort Wayne is in that district, my hometown. And it was wonderful because we walked in and there was a group of students who had taken a bus from Fort Wayne. And they got this special tour. And at one point, another fellow that I was talking with said, you know, not every congressman, let alone a freshman congressman, can arrange something like this. We had access to places in the Capitol that very few non-congressional staffers get. We actually got to see the porch that looks out over the wall. We got to go into the crypt. We got to go to various places that you don't normally get to go to. And what that means is this, is that through the evening I learned that Congressman Stutzman, like Jeffrey Deal, who spoke to us earlier, he learned early the value of life. and was not swayed by the culture of death and all the machinery that's been put into place to try to convince us that either it's not true or it's just simply not important. And Representative Stutzman is a young guy. He and his wife have been married about 12 years. And they have 2 kids, young kids. He's a farmer. She thought she was going to go into opera, but God had other plans for them. Just as God has plans for all of you. And he told us at one point, he says, you know, I could never have imagined years ago that I would be a member of Congress today. We were raised in a very poor family. We lived in a trailer at some point in our life. I had 5 other brothers and sisters. And then we never could have imagined that someday I could be voting for pro-life and other critical issues as an elected member of Congress. So I share with you, especially the young people here, but none of us is exempted, that too should be something on your list of possibilities. Following people like Jeff Deal, Marlin Stutzman, and running for office. The only way in this system of government that we can effectively cement change is to be the change. And so any one of you out there who either has maybe thought about it or hasn't thought about it at all, open your mind to the possibility of getting involved and active, even in Massachusetts, especially in Massachusetts, in the political realm. It is vitally important. We cannot hope to save and protect the unborn, the elderly, and all the vulnerable if we in fact do not have members like Marlin Stutzman, who told us that he would go to rallies in Fort Wayne and Allen County and other places where pro-lifers were gathered. He is one of us, now sitting in the chamber, the House chambers. We visited the House chambers last night, and I didn't know this. I've been in D.C. and have been to the House chamber before, but in 2 days, we will see, if you turn on your TV in the evening on Tuesday, I guess it's tomorrow, you will see the State of the Union address by President Obama. You'll see all the people come in, but you know what you won't see? You know what's above the podium there, the platform, where you have the president, and then behind the president you have the vice president, and then the Senate Pro Tem, and the Speaker of the House. Do you know what's above them? Anybody know? It's a phrase. In God we trust. That right there, above every member of Congress, when he or she looks up to the Speaker's podium, above that is in God we trust. We cannot let our country and our elected officials forget. In God we trust. The other thing that I didn't know is when the president stands at the podium, and he looks out into the crowd, and if you would happen to look up, there's a balcony, and above the balcony, there's a row of faces carved in stone. And you go all around. And at the back, there's one unusual face. It's the only carved face that has the full face looking this way, as opposed to a side view. All the others, Washington, Jefferson, Adams, are all side views. The only one that's not, do you know who that is? He's not an elected official, except if you figure that he was elected by God. It's Moses. President Obama, or any official that stands where he's going to stand tomorrow night, if we were to glance up, he would see the face of Moses. He's up there, according to what we learned last night, because he is the lawgiver that so inspired the founders of our country. That they gave them a way of approaching how we can govern ourselves as a people. And the way that he and his Moses' assistants helped to govern the people as they moved out of Egypt, the people of Israel, and were in the desert for 40 days. The way that they approached that inspired the founders of our country. It is vitally important that we know that the law of God, the law of life, must govern our society. And just as Moses looks down on every elected official when you have a State of the Union address every year, we too must look upon our officials and make sure that they do not forget that it's we, the people, not you, the elected officials, that govern in this country. Don't let them forget that. Make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure you are active in whatever way you can be in politics, which is not a dirty word. Politics for life is the cleanest word or phrase you could ever hope to hear. We are politicians for life. We are the people of this great country. We are the people who are striving to bring us back to the core values and to remind our legislators, as Moses looks down, that the law does not come from us. It comes from God through us. Let me finish with a couple other pieces of information that I didn't know until last night. We went to what used to be the original chambers of the House in the Capitol building. And it's a semicircular room. And it's the famous room known for the whispering. We could stand at one spot, and way over on the other side of the room, somebody could whisper. And because of the architecture of the room, one could hear the whispering of somebody far away. And where I happened to be standing was right near a little plaque in the floor. And what they do in that room is they have plaques where people who served in Congress, especially at that time, became president. And I was near the plaque for John Quincy Adams, who was the only congressman to have already served as president before he came into Congress. So his plaque is right there, and he was the one who would be able to spy on the whisperings of the other party, because his spot was like the prime spot for hearing the whispers from far away. And he was in Congress. He decided to run for Congress, even though he had been president and all these other different positions in our government beforehand. He was elderly. He decided to run because he was convinced that it was important that he not die without doing something more to eradicate slavery. He heard the call, even in his older years. And he had something that he said that really struck me. I heard last night. And I think it really applies, and I think it's something that I meant to share with you today. And that is the struggle, even, he served 6 years, and he lost by one single vote in the Senate a bill that would have changed and eradicated or limited slavery. He was devastated, and it was only years after that slavery eventually was eradicated. But he said something that sticks with me and I think is meant for you to hear. He said, "The duty is ours. The results are God's." We have been in this battle for a long time on the pro-life issue, 39 years, on abortion. It's a long time. We can get discouraged, especially people with white hair under their Patriots hats. But the young people coming in are a reminder that discouragement is not what we're called to continue in, because God keeps touching hearts. God keeps allowing parents to hand down the values with the young people, and the young people have the energy, the innovative skills, and the opportunity to make a difference. So 39 years is a long time. But when we reach that date, through the efforts of everybody here, especially the young people, one of you sitting in those seats out there right now may be the one that casts the final overriding vote for a constitutional amendment to protect human life at all stages. One of you. It's going to take hard work. It's going to take a lot of reflection, a lot of support. We work together as a team. But one of you sitting in these seats, especially one of you young ones, could be the one that will cast that vote. Open your mind and heart to that possibility. That's what John Quincy Adams was calling for. He knew that he wasn't going to see the eradication of slavery in his lifetime, but he knew the duty was his. The results were God's. Finally, in the main rotunda under the dome in the Capitol, there are several statues. And I've been there before, but this is the first time I've been there to see a new statue. At least new to me. And that statue is a carving, a bronze figure of President Ronald Reagan. And one of the Congressman Stutzman's kids, 12 years old I think, Congressman turned to him and said, "Why don't you tell the group what you learned about this statue of Ronald Reagan?" So he came over and he pointed out that Ronald Reagan, when he early on in his life became convinced that communism had to be eradicated. But of course, when he became aware of this, it was at a time when communism was strong. And when he became president, communism, by all appearances, was still strong. And the Stutzman boy, I forget his first name, but he pointed to the base of the statue of Ronald Reagan. And you know what's in that base? It's a special stone. You know where that stone is from? The Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall exemplified the force, the staying power, the power of communism. And now we have a statue in our nation's capital of Ronald Reagan standing over the Berlin Wall. We face a Berlin Wall in this issue. 39 years is a wire and concrete dividing line between what is good and what is happening. We have to be convinced that that Berlin Wall is not permanent. Let me finish with a final thought. In this month, we celebrate the life and witness of Martin Luther King. And he said something in his speech when he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize that stuck with me. And it refers to the is and the ought. What we are, what we can only hope to be, and what we need to strive to be, the ought. I refuse to accept the idea, Dr. King said, that the isness of man's present nature makes him morally incapable of reaching up for the eternal oughtness that forever confronts him. Now, the common DNA of great social movements lies precisely in the capacity of each movement to narrow the gap in human achievement between is and ought. Whatever the cause at stake, be it life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, the failure to abide by principles and values of eternal origin indicates a flawed design. Human frailties render every effort, of course, to improve society ultimately imperfect. None of us is perfect, and no movement is perfect. But some efforts succeed more than others. The better movements do not mistake short-sighted desires and impulses with truth. And they do not dismiss the search for truth as unnecessary or irrelevant. In his Nobel acceptance speech, Dr. King emphasized that, quote, civilization and violence are antithetical concepts, and continued his call for nonviolence in pursuit of racial justice. What he was saying is means and ends must cohere with an inner integrity. Eternal principles will apply when choosing both ends and means. We cannot escape the law of God and Moses. Thus, the great end of racial equality did not justify resort to violence. There is a risk whenever one movement is compared to another. The histories may differ just enough, the experiences may not translate exactly, and the objectives and tactics may not equally conform to the truth and the good. Though the lessons of achievement and failure in any movement can educate the participants of any other movement, not all campaigns deserve honor and prominence in the textbooks of inquiry. This month, on the 39th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, we grieve the loss of unborn lives taken by abortion. We also acknowledge the pain experienced by those compelled to think or misled into believing that this was their only choice. A revolution of false liberation deserves the blame. In its denial of basic scientific and ethical realities, in its presumption imposing the burden of persuasion on those advocating for the most vulnerable human lives among us, and in its callous disregard of the post-abortion wounds inflicted on women in the name of women's rights. The movement for abortion rights, styled as the movement for women's freedom and equality, and thus touted as the child of Dr. King's movement for racial justice. That movement lacks the essential DNA of goodness and right. No cause that trumpets violence against the defenseless innocent, that dissembles about the existence and value of life from conception, or that pits mother and child against each other for economic and social motives, can ever compare favorably to the civil rights struggle of blacks and other racial minorities. January links the movement for abortion rights and the movement for racial equality by including dates significant to both. This happenstance of history will forever remind all of us who hang each year's new calendar in our home or on our office walls to reflect and to learn and to persist. We will always be confronted by the demands of the eternal oughtness and the need to better the is of our fallen nature in response to those demands. By coming here today, by marching in this great and wonderful capital of ours, even in the midst of the culture of death, you have demonstrated and will continue to witness to the power of a conviction that ought must govern.